And for those of you who don't know the titling within the National Science Foundation, Assistant Director of the Engineering Directorate means she runs the Engineering Directorate. There's only one director of the NSF. Dawn is an accomplished engineer. She received a PhD in electrical engineering and computer science from the University of California, Berkeley, after having spent time there and at the University of Minnesota. She has over 300 publications on topics of control theory, applied to manufacturing systems, to fault handling, to management of computer systems and performance of computing systems, modular controls, network controls. She and her research group have done work on trust and control in autonomous systems, large data and fault detection, intelligence, developing robotic control systems that are robust against unexpected changes in environment or the functioning of the robot itself. Really a tremendous body of work that's impacted engineering in important ways. She has, again, many publications. One of her jointly authored works, a book on feedback control of computing system, has a very large number of citations. I won't embarrass her by quoting the number, but I checked last night. But really, I think a very impactful book on bringing ideas of control theory to understand the dynamic response of computing systems, and really a work that's had a big impact among many other pieces of her work. She's won the Distinguished Engineering Educator Award from the Society of Women Engineers and many other awards as well. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dawn Tilbury to you and to hear from her about big ideas and industries of the future and convergence. Dawn?
Well, thank you so much, James and Raphael. And I am happy to be here. I'm not as happy as I would have been to be in Albuquerque because I think it's such a great town and such a great university. But given the situation that we're in, I'm glad I was able to visit at least virtually. So I've structured my talk to give a very brief overview of a lot of different things that are happening at NSF. And then I'll leave plenty of time at the end for you to ask me questions about anything I said or anything I forgot to say or I didn't say, because if you wanted to hear about everything that's going on at NSF, we'd be here until midnight. So we don't want to do that. It's Friday afternoon. At least it's afternoon for me. It might still be morning for you guys, but let's get going. So I'm sure many of you are aware that NSF funds research and education in all fields of science and engineering, from astronomy, unlocking the secrets of the universe, making pictures of black holes, to zoology, understanding how animals behave, and even understanding how bats and coronavirus behave. So engineering is certainly part of one of those things in between A and Z. We also have a couple of stations that we operate year-round in Antarctica, which is an exciting thing to do at NSF. And we have a lot of international collaborations that I'll talk about briefly towards the end of the talk. So really very broad perspective at NSF. Here's the numbers. These are based on fiscal 19 activities, although you can see our fiscal 20 budget. Now, if you're following the federal budget, fiscal year 20 ended on September 30th of 2020. So we're already partway into fiscal year 21. But we're still crunching all the numbers for fiscal 20. So the numbers you see in this slide have changed a little bit. But the number I'd like to point you to is on the very far left. 94% of the funds we get from Congress, taxpayers like you, go out the door to fund research and education activities, primarily at universities. You can see there's almost 2,000 different institutions that we fund, again, primarily in universities, but also small businesses and science museums and other types of nonprofit organizations. There's a big chunk of that budget on the orange bar that goes to STEM education, because we believe, and it's part of our mandate, to improve the educational environment for all STEM education, although most of our funding does go to universities to do research on how to improve STEM education. Obviously, we don't teach ourselves, but it's really interesting to look at the whole breadth of what NSF does. So here's the budget numbers. You can see the blue bars are the presidential request every year, And then the way this works, in February, the presidential request goes to Congress, and then Congress, House and Senate write their bills, they come to consensus, pass a bill, and the president signs it. So the blue bars are the enacted, and you can see over the last few years, NSF's budget has been slowly creeping up. Right now, as you can see, fiscal 21, we're operating under a continuing resolution. And so we're hopeful that Congress, both this House and the Senate will pass. The House has passed a bill, the Senate's looking at a bill that they'll both pass and come to conference and send something to the president before December 21st, so we can get our fiscal year 21 enacted. If not, we will continuing resolution. That means we're operating at fiscal 20 levels, so at $8.3 billion annually. We may get more than that depending on how Congress comes out. So the engineering is a fraction of that, as you might expect. And you can see it shows sort of this similar upward trend. The dashed lines are SBIR and STTR, which is a federally mandated program for many agencies. And that is a fraction of the overall NSF budget, but the funding for it comes in engineering. We run the SBIR program for the whole agency. So this is a little bit of an eye chart for the Directorate for Engineering, but I think it's interesting to look at how we're organized. So I'm the Assistant Director, as James mentioned. That means I run the Engineering Directorate and I have a deputy. There are 5 divisions in engineering. The 3 in the middle, the light blue boxes, are what I call the disciplinary divisions. You can probably see most engineering disciplines reflected in those titles, although none of them is exactly mapped to one department. On the far left, we have Engineering Education and Centers, which runs the ERC program that you are probably familiar with, as well as Engineering Education Research and Workforce Development programs. And then on the far right, if I put my head out of the way, you see Industrial Innovation and Partnerships, and that covers all aspects of NSF, not only engineering. They run the SBIR program, they do I-Corps, they do IUCRCs. So a lot of things that deal with industrial partnerships, NSF partnerships, et cetera. So that's kind of how the Engineering Directorate is organized. I won't go into the boxes on the top, but happy to answer questions if you have any. One thing I always like to remind people of is a couple of years ago in engineering, we went to what we call no deadlines, which means that you can submit a proposal to our core programs, meaning the ones that don't have a specific solicitation attached to them, at any time. And I always get the question, well, when's the best time to submit my proposal? And the answer is when it's ready. We continue to process proposals all year long, and we are continuing to process proposals even during the pandemic. The program directors will wait until enough proposals come in, and then they'll organize a panel to review that set of proposals, and then they'll make the awards and declines. So it's not that you can time your proposal according to some certain master calendar, because it depends on when everybody else sends their proposal in. The one thing to think about is the fiscal year, right? Their fiscal year ends at the end of September. So proposals that come in too close to the end of the fiscal year, well, they could just get carried over to the next one. Not a problem. And we believe this is giving the community the flexibility, especially during these uncertain times when people have so many other demands on their schedules, that they can take the time they need to craft the proposals and send them in when they're ready. Of course, many different programs still have deadlines. Any solicitation that would come out with a specific deadline, that still maintains. So I said I would talk about the big ideas. These ideas were rolled out several years ago, actually just before I got to NSF, as ideas that were ripe for transformational advances with a little bit of extra resources. And so this slide sort of shows all of the 10 big ideas. The blue ones are what we call the research big ideas, and the gray ones are the enabling ideas. And I'll talk about a few of these as I go through. Now, some people have been concerned that by putting all this money into the big ideas, we're taking away from the core programs. But again, if I move myself out of the way, you can see $432 million total in the fiscal 21 for the big ideas. out of more than $8 billion for the agency. So this is a small piece of money on top of what we're doing in all of the other programs. And we believe that by bringing these teams, these are all team-based research, I'll talk about convergence, to really push forward the frontiers of science and engineering. I've also found that they make it easier to talk about what NSF really does, because when I talk to my neighbor, if I said, oh yeah, we're funding fundamental research in engineering and geosciences, that might not mean the same thing as if I say, we're helping to define the future of work at the human technology frontier, or understand the rules of life. So those are things that can connect with people at a more basic level and help explain to the broader community what NSF's research is really trying to accomplish. So I'm not going to go through all 10 because I don't have time, but as I mentioned in the Q&A, happy to answer questions about any of the 10. So I put convergence here first because, and I'm not quite far enough away from my slide there, but convergence NSF defines as having two primary characteristics. The first is that it's the combination of multiple disciplines, the deep integration of multiple disciplines. And the second is that it's solving a specific or compelling challenge. So it's not just taking a mechanical engineer and a biologist and a mathematician and throw them in a room and see what they come up with, although they probably come up with some really interesting ideas, but try to think about how do we think about the future of work at the human technology frontier? What people do we need? What technologies do we need? What techniques and methods to try to help address that question and bring those people together to help solve that problem. So that's what we define as convergence. And one of the big ideas that you saw on the previous slide was called growing convergence research. So if you have an idea for a specific problem that needs to be solved that requires multiple disciplines, and you don't see it in any existing NSF program, you can send it to growing convergence research, because we want to make sure that we're capturing all of the great ideas existing in the community. So grand challenges are one type of problem that, that you might think of for convergence research. So one of the 10 big ideas is the future of work at the human technology frontier. And what we've been doing in the past year on this big idea is holding stakeholder workshops. So we've brought together people from industry, from other government agencies, from universities to think about what is the technologies that we're going to need, what kinds of people are going to be working in those future workplaces, and how is the productivity going to be impacted. And we started doing this before the pandemic. We didn't know it was going to happen. But I feel like with everything moving to virtual, the future of work is just coming so much faster than we ever could have imagined. The physical and virtual workspaces. I mean, who would have imagined 6 months ago? Well, maybe 6 months ago we would have imagined. But last year, we weren't thinking about doing so many things over Zoom or virtually. And now here we are, the future is here. But how can we react to that? What do we really need to understand about work, about workers, and about the workplace and the technologies and how they connect those to really push forward and make the future workplace and the future workers most productive? Obviously, ethical questions and policy implications. So you can look for the outputs of these workshops. The reports will be published on our website, and those outputs will help inform the next set of solicitations for this big idea. I wanted to mention mid-scale research infrastructure. So you can see the bridge on the left that has this big gap in the middle. And this is for research infrastructure. So you may be familiar with MRI, major research instrumentation, which has a budget of up to about $6 or $7 million, including cost share, that NSF has a long-standing program to address that. The other half of the bridge is major MREFC, telescopes, ships, really big things, $100 million and more. But there's been a gap in the middle of funding for things that are, say, between $7 and $100 million. And so we have issued already the first round of mid-scale 1 and mid-scale 2 solicitations. And the engineering community was not very well represented in those. So we thought in engineering, well, let's help the community try to identify what are the needs for research infrastructure that can help engineering research advance to the frontiers. And you can see we funded these 9 workshops or conferences. There's a lot more detail if you want to look at those. And again, the workshop reports will be coming out and posted publicly. And we'll see how some of these may result in mid-scale research infrastructure 1 that's going to be due in January. And the mid-scale research infrastructure 2, which is the larger size of mid-scale, those will be due sometime later in 2021. The solicitation is still being prepared. It hasn't been published yet, but it will be soon. You can expect that that will be coming. I also want to mention NSF Includes, which is a broadening participation effort from NSF. As you are aware, NSF has been investing in diversity and inclusion and broadening participation for decades. Universities have been doing the same thing. Industries have been doing the same thing. Nonprofits have been doing the same thing. And there's been a huge number of really great success stories, but too many of them are small scale or local. So the NSF Includes effort is to try to bring together all of those efforts in a national network and use a collective impact approach to try to scale up the broadening participation efforts so that the teams can learn from each other and really scale their efforts. So the goal, of course, for broadening participation is to enhance the US leadership in science and engineering by developing talent from all sectors of our society, demographically, geographically, abilities and disabilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We really want to make sure all voices have an opportunity to participate in the STEM enterprise. So we have been participating with many different federal agencies, and I only put the NASA logo there because our partnership with NASA is very specific to engineering. NASA, of course, wants a lot of great engineers, and so we're partnering with them to try to increase the number of broadening participation efforts, specifically in engineering and engineering education. So now let me move a little bit to other types of investments. And I mentioned the industries of the future. So these are 5 industries that have been identified by the administration and Congress as really being ripe for the US to take a leadership role and scale up and speed up our future industry So the 5 that you see here, advanced manufacturing, artificial intelligence, wireless, biotechnology, and quantum, some of them are related to the big ideas, like quantum information science is very closely related to the quantum leap big idea. Biotechnology is somewhat related to understanding the rules of life. And both advanced manufacturing and artificial intelligence have some relationship to the future of work. So there's some relationships between these big ideas and the industries of the future, but they're not exactly the same thing. NSF feels that these industries of the future have also a lot of opportunity for future growth, but our role at NSF is to fund the fundamental basic research that's going to enable these industries to move to the next level. So in advanced manufacturing, we funded what we called future manufacturing. So this was research and education for manufacturing that either does not exist yet or is only at such small scales that it's not commercially viable. And we identified 3 areas of manufacturing that we thought were ripe for being a future manufacturing area: biomanufacturing, cyber manufacturing, and eco-manufacturing. And last year we spent $40 million across 24 awards in these 3 areas. And we expect a new solicitation to come out for fiscal 21 in similar topics. So advanced wireless, again, I mean, 5G is rolling out all across the nation and 6G is being planned. But what NSF is trying to do is look at the fundamentals of how can we better share spectrum? How can we develop future wireless technologies to make networks faster, smarter, more responsive, and more robust? And again, there's a lot of different activities that are going on across NSF and primarily within engineering and computer science and math and physical sciences, opportunities for advancing wireless communications as you think about not just cell phones, but the Internet of Things and smart cameras and smart homes and all these different things. How can they connect, share spectrum, and really be more efficient and effective? Artificial intelligence is on the top of everyone's mind. Everybody's excited to see what kind of future it's going to bring and a little bit afraid of what changes, unpredicted changes. So we've been funding a lot of research in artificial intelligence across the whole foundation. And this slide is really just focusing on the research institutes, which is a new effort that came out of NSF. The first ones were funded in fiscal 20. You can see there were 5 awards and 10 planning grants. And some of these were partnered with other government agencies. Now in fiscal 21, some of the partnerships will be with new agency and new industry partners. Proposals are coming up very quickly. So if you're not already writing one, you're probably a little bit behind, but we expect this to continue for multiple years. So if you haven't, gotten ready for December 4th, think about next year. There may be new topics, new opportunities in artificial intelligence. Biotechnology, of course, is becoming front and center as we're trying to deal with the pandemic. But you can see a few of the solicitations that we have here that are related to the rules of life or beyond the rules of life. One of the things I think is really interesting that we've been doing for a couple of years now is Signals in the Soil is trying to, again, going back to the wireless area, build sensors that can be deployed and try to understand how the soil is evolving and try to use it for precision agriculture and improve crop yields or better understand the environment and the ecology. Quantum, of course, is another big effort. So much promise and so much fear about quantum computing and how it's going to change our lives, speed up some computations, maybe break the security of the internet. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of industry activity. Many of these quantum challenge institutes are partnering with industry, but also a lot of need for fundamental basic research to really understand what's going on and how to build those devices that can populate those quantum computers and really see the future of quantum computing. I mentioned the ERC program. The new competition is underway, but these are the 4 ERCs that we announced this year. These were the first of what we call Generation 4 ERCs that responded to a National Academies report about redoing the ERC program. Just want to point out that it's a very diverse set of topics. We didn't say we need ERCs in biological systems. We said we need ERCs in areas with big societal impact that require convergence approaches to engineering research. And quantum, of course, is one of them, but there's many different opportunities for ERCs. I want to mention EFRI. So this is a program within engineering that every 2 years, we get 2 new topics. So these are the current 2 topics, distributed chemical manufacturing and engineering the elimination of end-of-life plastics. And so we make awards for these for 2 fiscal years. Now the deadline has passed to suggest topics for the next 2 fiscal years, but we're currently in the review process, and next spring we'll announce the 2 new topics. So keep that in mind if you have new ideas for new research areas. EFRI can be a great place to submit, not the proposal, just the idea for future research. We've also in the past couple of years introduced these what I call mid-size research. So EFRI proposals are about $2 million over 4 years. So they're pretty big, much bigger than a individual investigator grant, but much smaller than an ERC. So they're kind of in the middle sweet spot scale. And we thought that that idea of having those mid-size opportunities would be good to have across all of engineering. So each of the disciplinary divisions that I mentioned earlier has their own mid-size opportunity. You can see them listed here. And we will continue to run these solicitations on an annual basis and look at the types of convergent research across engineering that we can have some big impacts in solving societal challenges. This is one example from Northwestern that you can see in resilient urban infrastructure. That was the LEAP High project. A new solicitation we announced this year is Sustainable Regional Systems. This was in response to an advisory committee report that you can see in the picture there that really looks at how do the systems of urban systems, rural systems, food, energy, water, power, transportation, all these different systems to come together to enhance sustainability. What are the fundamental research questions that we need to improve the sustainability across these multi-dimensional systems? And so we funded a bunch of workshops. Again, the reports are online, and we used the results of those workshops to help inform the solicitation that was posted, and the proposals are due in January. Now, these are much larger awards. I think the research networks are order of $3 million a year. So much bigger than even a mid-size award, but not quite as big as an ERC. A new thing that we've started, obviously we've been funding research in disaster resilience for a long time because we have earthquakes, we have hurricanes, we have tornadoes, we have floods. And so there's always been an interest in doing research on how to make systems, both the built infrastructure and other infrastructures, more resilient to natural disasters. But the new thing is that this is a collaboration with NIST. And it's something that, and it's in both NSF's and NIST's mandate to work on the research related to these natural disasters. And now we have this joint call so that proposals can be submitted to the joint call, and NIST and NSF will fund the parts that are appropriate for their mission. So I also want to mention this intern supplement, if you're not familiar with that. This allows a supplement to any engineering award, actually almost any NSF award, to send a graduate student, master's or PhD, to an industry or non-academic, any non-academic internship. So the supplement comes to the university to pay the student. The student goes to do an internship at a company, large or small, a national lab, a nonprofit organization, pretty much anything that's non-academic. They need to continue their research on the NSF grant to continue to advance the research that was proposed. But it's a great opportunity, and it reacts to this report about graduate STEM education that realizes most of our PhD students will not become professors. So giving them this opportunity to have a non-academic experience during their PhD or master's degree. I'm not going to go through all these international collaborations, but I'll just flash them up briefly to show that NSF continues to support international collaborations. We think it's important. In some ways, it's harder to collaborate internationally when you can't get on a plane. In other ways, it's easier to collaborate internationally because you don't have to get on a plane. And so trying to make it sense of what the opportunities are. The time zone is still a tricky part, but I think there are opportunities across the globe for NSF and international collaboration in basic research. These are a few of the Dear Colleague letters that if you're subscribed to the NSF updates, you have seen come across your email address. Lots of different things that are coming out. And so because we have no deadlines in engineering, we can issue a Dear Colleague letter that gives people a pointer that we're specifically interested in receiving proposals on this. For example, the erase PFAS, the perfluoride, get the thing wrong, the forever chemicals that are present in the environment, and how can we help remediate those. So I think this is something that's, you can keep an eye on your colleague letters that just point you or invite you to write a proposal with no deadlines, and of course, several different supplement opportunities. So visioning is something that started before I got to NSF and hopefully will continue long after I leave. But we've had a workshop, you can see the report here, and issued a solicitation to create this Visioning Alliance. And so we hope that this alliance will bring together the engineering research community across universities, government, and industry to think about what are the big new challenges that engineering researchers should be thinking about. What are the challenges and what are the opportunities? And so we want to have this visioning activity. I mean, we do visioning all the time, a lot by funding these types of workshops that you've heard about. But I think this is more a concerted and coordinated effort to help create those future visions. So this alliance, we hope, will be announced soon. The proposals are under review. And we hope that you and your colleagues will participate in those activities. I'd like to end my talk by telling a story about my colleague, Shaurya Avtar from the University of Michigan, because he pretty much went through the whole spectrum of engineering funding. So these dots that you see here are proportional to the amount of money that he got from NSF. So you can see he started with a career award, that's the brown dot in CMMI, and then he had some core basic research award, also from CMMI. Now, for those of you mechanical engineers in the audience, Shaurya's research is on kinematics, which is old-fashioned mechanical engineering. It's not sort of an NSF priority. On the other hand, he had a really innovative idea about how to remap a laparoscopic surgery instrument from the surgeon's hand to the end effector using purely kinematics. So the surgeon moves his hand this way, the end effector moves the same way. The Da Vinci robot can do that. It costs $1 million and takes up a whole room. Shaurya's instrument costs $500. So much more affordable, simple, no electronics, pure mechanics. So he went through I-Core, and that's that little pink dot in the middle, or red, which is an NSF program to train entrepreneurs. We bring together, you can see the PI, Shaurya, the entrepreneurial lead, that's his PhD student, and an entrepreneurial mentor who takes this team through a customer discovery process. And at the end of 7 weeks, they have a decision to make. Is this technology ready to start a company or not? Now at NSF, we think either decision is important. If the technology is not ready or there's no market need, then don't waste your time and effort starting a company. And then you can go back to the lab and try to do something else. So, well, he had a good decision out. And so you can see the orange dot is SBIR phase 1, the purple dot is SBIR phase 2. And now this company is up and running in Michigan with several dozen employees, making these little laparoscopic surgery instruments as quickly as they can. And now if I move over, you can see he has a new basic research award, also from CMMI, with another new idea. And so this cycle may start again. I asked him once, what do you think? Is it going to start again? He says, oh, that was a lot of work, but it was really fun. So we'll see. So I also want to mention that I'm a rotator at NSF, and we also have a lot of other rotators. So these are just the list of current positions that are open. People come in, people go out. So if you don't see the topic that you think you might be interested to rotate into NSF to work on, look back again in a couple of months. There's the web link in the top. We're always looking for program directors. I'll say about half of the technical staff in engineering are rotating, and the other half are federal employees. In addition to program directors, as I mentioned, my term will end in June. And you can see here is the official announcement of the search for my replacement, and the name of the search committee chair and where to send in your recommendations or your applications. There are 2 division director positions that are currently open, and you can either find those on the careers page or you can send me the email and I'd be happy to point you to them. I think it's a great opportunity to come to NSF and be part of setting the agenda for the future of engineering research. So that's the end of my presentation. If you ask me what's coming up next at NSF, well, obviously we're going to be hiring a lot more people. People will rotate in and out. And these are the things that I've already mentioned. And of course, we're going to have a birthday party next year, 40 years old. So thank you very much. I think I've left plenty of time for Q&A. So I look forward to hearing your questions and comments and answering any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tilbury. I think the audience, please, I encourage you to use your reactions. I'm sure that all are great. I think are all positive because we have heard a fantastic talk about, we can learn and understand more about NSF, and we are really grateful for that. Dawn, I really appreciate that you give us your time, because I know that you are extremely busy. So we all appreciate this talk, and it's going to be beneficial for all, from junior, middle careers, and senior faculty as well. So, and you will be talking to all of them, I think, in the next sessions. So, but I think we have, well, as you say, we have time for questions. So, it's always a bit tricky how to handle the questions. But what we're going to do is I will be coordinating the questions, and I think we have time, so everybody's going to will be able to ask questions if you have them, and just be patient in case that just the order could be a bit not very well defined. But I will try to let's see, to let you ask the questions. So one possibility would be that you write your questions using the chat option. So now the chat is enabled. So you could write your questions there. And also, if you could raise your hand, if you can raise your hand, so then I can start giving you access to ask questions, right? So if you are able to, you should be able to raise your hand, I think.
Is anybody asking?
If you don't have any questions, I'd also be interested to hear if people have any comments or anything. So I see in the chat, could you say something about the Air Force partnership? So a couple of years ago, almost now, the director of NSF and the secretary of the Air Force signed a letter of intent that they wanted to collaborate more. And we've had a lot of conversations with the Air Force, and we originally identified 4 topics. One was on advanced material science. One was on geospatial awareness. One was on AI, artificial intelligence, and one was on workforce development. And so we had different groups working on all of those different programs. And so just this summer, we signed what we call an umbrella MOU between NSF and the Air Force, AFRL, to collaborate in many different ways. So we have this MOU, and I think the first annex that went through was a partnership with AFOSR and NSF on the DEMREF program, the Designing Materials to Revolutionize and Engineer Our Future, DEMREF. Yeah, so that was the first one that came out, but there's several other MOUs, annexes pending that we think you'll see lots more things coming out for partnerships with the Air Force and NSF. So through this umbrella that we have now, this memorandum of understanding. So.
Thank you, Dawn. So there is another question from Margaret Washburn, and it says, well, thank you. And can you tell the participants about the Waterman Award? So, so I think Margaret is on the committee, and she doesn't think many people may know about the award. And Margaret, you can unmute yourself if you would like to follow up.
Yeah, because I know of it. I am not on the committee. I know it's a very prestigious award for young or younger. I don't know if I am not sure if it's age, like how many years old you are, or age, how many years since your PhD or your last degree. But it is for early career or younger faculty. I think it's primarily faculty, and it comes with an award. I know it comes with an award of $1 million for research that's from NSF, because we in NSF hold that funding in case engineering has a Waterman Award winner, then we have to give that funding to that person. So I think that's what I know, but Margaret, if you wanted to talk about what other people should know and how they should nominate people, I think that would be great.
Yeah, I would have people look into it. I mean, right now, these kinds of awards, it's all the usual suspects in terms of people who are nominated. And I think that the people around the country don't understand the high level of work that's being done at UNM. And so it's something to look into. It's, you may not even get it, but it's a very high level committee with heads of this and presidents of that. And so just being noticed would really help all of UNM. So I would really encourage it. And I've had more fun because there's a lot of engineering people that are, Caltech and Georgia Tech and Harvard and stuff like that. And so it's very fun for me to be able to, say, this is great engineering work, so just keep it in mind as an award that it would be absolutely fabulous for UNM to have someone who would receive this award at some point in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. So the next question is from Provost Holloway.
So maybe I'll follow up on that.
Sorry. Okay.
I think her point about suggesting people to nominate for awards is really important. And also, I think suggesting people to apply for these leadership positions at NSF. I would not be AD at NSF if I hadn't had several people send me the ad and say, hey, I think you'd be really good at this. You should apply. And of course, it's a lot of work to apply, but I wouldn't have even thought about it. So for all of you, think about the leadership positions I mentioned are open, this award that's coming up. Think about people, hey, I think you'd be good. You should consider applying, whether it's for an award or a leadership position, whatever. Because people aren't sitting in their offices necessarily, which award should I apply for this year? Maybe some of them are, but I think a lot of people would appreciate a nudge. Okay, Rafael, sorry, I interrupted your next.
No, it's fine. Sorry. I should check with you first if we can move to the next question. So, so the next question is from actually Provost Holloway, and if Provost Holloway would like to basically read his own question.
Sure, I can do that. It's like a test. What was I interested in 5 minutes ago? So you mentioned the Big 10 ideas, and you mentioned the industries of the future, and I was a little curious about the process that was used to identify those, and also a little bit about what were the really cool things that were left off.
So I wasn't involved in either, so I can tell you what I know. So the 10 big ideas came out of a brainstorming effort by the ADs of the class before me. And I think they were thinking about a presidential transition, which obviously happened in 2016. And so they were thinking about new ideas for NSF that would really position NSF to move into the future. And they have resonated with both the administration and with Congress. So there was a bottom-up idea. Each AD got to suggest topics, and they had a retreat, and the sausage was made, and they came up with this list of 10. And some people would be like, 10, oh my God, that's way too many. But NSF is so broad that it's hard to think about, doing something smaller than that. The industries of the future came out of OSTP. They're listed in the, every summer, the OSTP issues a list of the administration priorities for research and development, and that's where that list of industries came out of. How they chose that list, I have no idea, sorry. I was not part of that sausage making. But I think, there's a lot of things that you could think of that could have been on the list or should have been on the list, and the categories are pretty broad, so you can maybe squeeze things in here or there.
Can I have a follow-up question on this? Is there any coordination between NSF and the Academy of Engineering and Sciences? Because the Academy of Engineering came up with 20 ideas of the future a couple of years ago. So
grand challenges.
Pardon?
The grand challenges for engineering, yeah.
Yes. So is there any coordination, or everybody comes up with their own ideas?
So we've looked at those. So yeah, NSF has the 10 big ideas. There's the engineering grand challenges. There's the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so actually the National Academy of Sciences at their annual meeting this year they're thinking about coming up with grand challenges for the National Academy of Sciences. And they had a panel where they had the NAE, NSF, and the UN talk about the process to come up with these grand challenges. I think the process of coming up with them brings the community together in one way. So I think there's partly value in having them, and there's partly value in creating them. And if you look at a lot of these different things, there's matches. You could draw connections between the NAE Grand Challenges overlap somewhat with the 10 Big Ideas. They're not completely disconnected. So,
thank you.
So, and you know, you can sit down and think of your own grand challenges too. And
the provost is here. My grand challenge is budget cutting, but that's
another grand challenge. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is from Dr. Yang Li, and it reads, traditionally NSF has not sponsored nuclear engineering, energy research, sorry. So will it be still the same in the future?
So NSF has a broad mandate, but we try not to overlap with mission-driven agencies that have much bigger budgets than we do. So I'm not familiar enough with nuclear engineering research, but I do believe that we fund fundamental basic research that is not really covered by other mission agencies. I believe the Department of Energy has a huge role in funding nuclear engineering research. And so I think it would be hard for NSF with our, even though $8 billion sounds like a lot of money, when you compare it to say Department of Energy or NIH, it's really quite small. And so we try to focus on the core pieces that we can do well. So I don't have a specifically, maybe the right answer to that, but we try to be broad, but also not overlap with other agencies, or we partner with them. Like I said, I mentioned with the Air Force, we have a lot of partnerships with them specifically on materials right now.
Thank you, Dan. I don't see any other question in the chat, and so maybe I can ask a few questions on my own, if possible, right? So, if the audience has some additional questions, please, you want to enter in the chat, so I will let you. We can talk with Don about that later. So I have a couple of questions. I think the first one is about convergence. I've been involved in the a planning grant for one of the ERC centers, and we are submitting right now, or we did submit the pre-proposal, right? So and we had meetings with program directors at NSF, and but at least for me, this idea of convergence was not that clear. So Dan, I was wondering if you can provide some additional an example about a successful convergence, a successful project that in a sense exploited these convergence aspects.
I'll try to speak about the future of work, because I think they have thought very closely about convergence, and they've tried to bring together engineers and computer scientists that are developing new technologies that could be used in workplaces, as well as social scientists who understand how the workers are behaving and interacting with those technologies, and economists who can understand how the technology can help improve productivity. And of course, if the technology doesn't improve the bottom line, it's not going to be useful. So I think trying to look at all of those different aspects, and a couple of examples of projects that they've done are like sorting recyclables, right? There's a huge amount of recyclable material. You probably throw it all into the blue bin, and then somebody's got to sort it out. And a lot of it is done by people, by hand. But if you can use artificial intelligence or robotics to help that, but just having a robot that can pull the cans off the line, well, how much does the robot cost and how does it interact with the people and what's the productivity impact, and do the people like working with the robot? And so I think having all those different people coming together, not just to do the technology without thinking about the people, but how does the technology interact with the people and what's the bottom line? Because you need to have all of those in order to have this project be successful. So the convergence projects tend to have a lot of people on them. I mean, it's not just 2 or 3 PIs, they usually have bigger teams, because you need to have the expertise that comes from all those different disciplines to try to understand the problem and see what the right technology solution might be.
Well, thank you, Dan. Let's see, I don't want to monopolize the question, the Q&A, but if there is any question from the audience, please feel free to let me know.
I have a question.
Please, Ido.
So Dawn, thank you for your presentation. You know, this election and the aftermath of this election really points out and highlights the large percentage of our population in this country that is ill-informed, undereducated. Regarding all the investment that NSF is making in STEM education, is it actually making an impact? And how do you see that evolving as we move forward?
So NSF's investment in STEM education, a lot of is either to individuals, like through fellowship programs, or to do research on how to better educate students in STEM. One of the challenges we have in the US is that there's a Department of Education, but there's also, I'll get the number wrong, but like 5,237 school districts, right? 50 state boards of education. And so trying to propagate STEM education out through the community is a heavy lift. And I think it's something NSF is working on, but that's not our mandate. We're doing the research to understand what works to educate STEM. We're also really ramping up our efforts in publicizing the results of our research and how it's having an impact on people and society. And so we've been working very closely with reporters and science reporters to try to make sure that they understand, they're introduced to the NSF PIs who have the great research results, and that they have the opportunity to understand the research. But you know, you can publish it, but not everybody reads it. And I think that's a harder problem to answer. We're trying to make it easier for people to understand. I think it is a challenge to have the science communication, because you've probably seen it too. I've seen it even talking to my colleagues, right? They're so deep in their own discipline, it's hard for them, you know, the fluid mechanics people, to explain to the controls people what they're really working on and what the key challenges are and what the methods are. So I think trying to increase that communication is something that we are definitely working on through many opportunities. And I think some of the things like the intern supplement, where students go into industry, they're put in a different environment and they have to try to communicate, and they get a lot of experience in communicating across different domains. So that's something that we think is important. I don't know that there's a single answer, but I think it is something we are absolutely working on, and trying to engage the whole PI community. If you remember that one slide, I mean, I think we support 300,000 or 400,000 people at some level, right? Some of them are participating in an activity, but if they can all help be ambassadors to spread the word about science and engineering and the important contributions that it's making to society, I think that's something we're working on. It's a work in progress.
Okay.
Follow up on that education question.
Mm-hmm.
Could you please comment on the Q to 12 initiative that NSF has just initiated or announced a few months ago?
I guess I'm not familiar with it, so I guess I cannot.
A couple months ago, and the question is, how will it be implemented at the high school level? But anyway, and will there be any coordination with universities?
I'm guessing it's coming out of the Education and Human Resources Directorate, which I probably saw the announcement flash across my email, but I'm sorry. I can follow up with you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
There is a question from Professor Svetlana Perzeva from Mechanical Engineering. Svetlana, you would like to ask the question directly, or do you want me to read the chat?
I think I got answers in the chat. So this is my question for, not for me, but for my assistant professors, colleagues, because yeah, they question how to get on the list and on the review panels. Yeah, so I'm on the list and I was on review panels, but when somebody just start work, they might don't know.
Yeah, so to get on the email list, you just go to the NSF website and sign up. You can sign up for the NSF website, you can sign up at the engineering website, you can sign up at the division website. There's a lot of email newsletters, but to get the announcements of Dear Colleague letters, it would be the overall NSF website, and you can select which things you want to get. If you select everything, my tip is ask to only send it once a day, because there's a lot of announcements that come out and you might not be interested in the new administrative assistant position that opened up in Bio Directorate this week. So if you put them all in one email, then it makes it easier to filter them out. So that's to get the announcements. I mean, it's all on the website. It's complicated. There's a lot of things going on. And I do agree that to contact the program directors to get on a review panel is something that you need to make a personal connection. You know, reach out to them and say you're a new professor. And I think I'm meeting with the junior professors later, but I think it's program directors want to be helpful. That's their job, to help the community navigate this complex federal funding system. And so reach out to them, but understand, at least at this time, they are as overloaded and overwhelmed as we all are, stuck at home with their small children, their aging parents, their dogs and cats, you know, frustrated, confused. We are all in the same boat. So try to be, you know, understanding that it might take them a while to get back to you, but they do really want to help.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Tilbury, for your insights and for your great presentation. Again, we really appreciate, and I know that you have many other things to do during your virtual visit. So I think your next event is in about 10 minutes. So I think it would be a good idea for maybe give you a quick break until you for your next meeting, right? So again, thank you so much, and we hope that you can come soon to Albuquerque, and maybe we can show you some of the School of Engineering facilities and talk more about research.
Absolutely, I'd love to come visit in the future sometime when travel becomes safe again. So,
can we all unmute and give it a round of applause, please? This is much better than those things that we let's see if we can coordinate. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll see you later on, and take care.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Well, bye-bye.
I am trying to find my